Hey guys, I'm Randy.
And I'm Daniel.
We're two lifelong friends and musicians, but when we're not playing gigs, we like to talk games.
And today, on the Game and Gig podcast, we are talking about how important movement mechanics are for a game and the current speculation about some rising prices within the world of Xbox. Well, Randy, I'm back.
I know, I'm very disappointed that you're back. But
Yeah, I'm disappointed to be here.
I'm sure everyone watching is disappointed that you're back too.
I'm sure they are. I mean, let's be honest, I'm the worst part of this program.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but now that you've said it, you know.
But you're the worster part.
Worcester? Mm-hmm. Isn't that some sort of like sauce?
It's similar to that. Yeah. It's like a sauce.
Yeah.
Put it on crap.
Yeah. Hey, you know, I guess you can put it on anything.
Very versatile.
Yeah, it's
Very versatile condiment.
Yeah.
Never overlook the Worcester sauce.
Yeah.
Anyway.
To the main topic of the podcast today. Well, I am glad you're back, in all honesty.
Glad to be back.
I thought I was gonna have to fly solo for the rest of the podcast for, you know,
Forever?
yeah.
Really?
I thought you were never coming back. I thought you were gonna be like, my voice is just gone. I can't talk anymore.
Well, I mean, it's still not perfect, but
No, it's not 100%, but you're good.
Yeah.
But yesterday, on the way to a gig, we were driving in the car and we started talking about Elden Ring, and we were talking about the movement in Elden Ring, and it kind of brought up this whole conversation about movement in video games. Mm-hmm. So we were like, heck, let's do a podcast on this.
Yeah, strangely, we actually agree on Elden Ring's movement.
Yes, because I don't think I even talked about it much on the podcast, but I did play a little bit of Elden Ring, a few hours of it. And one of the things that Daniel and I both agree on is that the movement in Elden Ring just doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel fun.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's not as tight as I wish it was.
Yeah. And so I've seen videos of other like Souls games, and the movement looks the same in all of them.
They look like Elden Ring.
And so we were kind of talking about, why does this feel so weird and unnatural? Why does it feel so strange? And then what makes great movement in a video game? And now that I've been kind of thinking about this a little bit, I've kind of come to the realization that for me personally, fluidity of not only the movements, but the animations make a big, that's very important to me. Because I don't necessarily think that like a game like Elden Ring or other like Souls games, it's not that the movement isn't responsive, because I'm sure it's responsive, but it just looks like so clunky. Like everything looks so clunky.
It does look clunky, and it makes me feel clumsy like within the game. Like,
yeah,
it makes me feel like I'm trying to fight this dragon like underwater.
Well, it is interesting because it does feel, to me, it feels slow. But I think that like, I've heard people say that like the movement in these Souls games is like, they say it's like, oh, it's perfectly just slow enough to where you have to be like really, deliberate, but it's not so fast or it's not so slow that you can't get out of the way.
And I think there's something to that.
Yeah, for sure. Like they definitely like they have a feel to them.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of that is like just, they've created so many games that use this exact type of movement that people are just used to it.
Yeah.
And that it's become the standard. But I have played games that are too zippy, and it feels like you just, if they're too fast, you kind of, it feels chaotic. So I do get that.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I think the more I've thought about it, I'm sure that the Souls games, they probably have their fans.
They definitely do.
In terms of the movement, I'm sure they have fans, but for me, it just like it. And it's obvious that they didn't prioritize the animations at all. It's just all about being really consistent, about like being able to move back, left, right, and kind of getting out of the way in a very consistent way. But it just doesn't look or feel that good to me personally.
Yeah. And also, we know that we're going to get like totally attacked for seemingly crapping on Elden Ring, but we're really not trying to do that.
No, not at all. No.
We just don't really like the movement. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a personal thing. And I think that there are probably some games where, like, for example, I think that some games that people traditionally think have very bad movement I think that they do some things right. Like, for example, like Rockstar games. We were talking about this in the car.
They can be weird.
Like, I think that they probably objectively have fairly bad movement, but there are some things that games like, say, Red Dead Redemption 2 or, GTA 5, like there are some things that are in those games that make up for it, that make movement fun for me. And we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a video just yesterday actually on YouTube of Arthur Morgan like ragdolling down a hill.
Yeah.
And then like they just couldn't get him stopped and he kept like flopping and I was like, "Oh yeah. That's what we were talking about."
Yeah, I'd say that the movement's probably pretty bad in those games, but for some reason I enjoy it way more than I enjoyed something like Elden Ring.
Well, it's a completely different
It's a different thing, but yeah. But we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But before we do that, like, what are some games that immediately come to mind when you think of like being like, I'll let you cough. What are some games that let you be? What is like the perfect movement in a game? Like, are there any games that come to mind?
Yes, immediately. The first game that came to mind for me was Metroid Dread.
Yeah,
because the movement is so good, like S tier movement.
Yeah, I think that Metroid Dread is the perfect example of a game that has very responsive and very fluid animations. Like the movement is super responsive and it does exactly what you want and it looks great while it's doing it. Yeah.
I remember seeing the trailers and I was like, oh my God, the movement in this game looks like it'll be so fun. Mm-hmm. And it was every bit as fun as it looked.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always happen.
No, I mean, the movement, that is like probably maybe the pinnacle of movement in video games. Like it is some of the best.
I can't think of one that I enjoyed more.
It's definitely it's definitely in the upper echelons for sure.
Yeah.
The immediate example that came to my mind in terms of movement in games is the like 3D Mario games. Those are, even back in
and the 2D games. Let's be honest.
Yeah, the 2D games not so much for me personally. I think that I've seen people do amazing stuff in the 2D games. But I don't feel like when I see people do that in 2D games, I think those people are monsters. I don't know how they do this. I don't feel like I have that great movement in 2D Mario games. But,
really?
But 3D games, I feel like I can do some cool stuff. Maybe it's my skill level.
I think it's both. I really think Mario in general just...
There are 2D games that, like 2D platformers that I think I like the movement in better. Specifically like Rayman Legends. I think that game has some of the best movement in a 2D platformer. And it makes things like within that game, there are stuff that looks impossible. There are things that you're like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get through this level. And somehow you do it because the controls are just so fluid. And like you're able to just make these perfectly precise maneuvers. And even my wife, who isn't even that,
Even your wife?
Even my wife can do this crazy. She would pull off this crazy stuff. And it was like... It just shows like that game, if you haven't played Rayman Legends and you're into 2D platformers.
Well, the things you're saying about Rayman Legends remind me of Celeste.
Yes.
Because like I remember seeing screens in Celeste that looked impossible.
Yes.
But none of them turned out to be impossible. So that game clearly has like super, super, super tight, like pixel perfect pinpoint controls.
Right,
It's great.
And we were actually going to talk about that yesterday, and I was trying to remember the name of the game, and I just like couldn't, like my brain wasn't working. I was thinking of The Messenger instead, which was not the game I was trying to think of.
And it was funny because I was trying to think of what you were thinking of, and I thought maybe Celeste, but I was like, no, Randy knows about Celeste. So I didn't even bring it up.
No, I know about Celeste. I just like was brain farting. Yeah. But
yeah.
Specifically, like beyond, like I feel like a lot of 2D platformers do movement pretty well.
Yes, and before we move past 2D platformers, I do want to highlight Smash.
Oh yeah,
because I feel like Smash. The reason I love Smash is because of the movement. Like, it's so versatile. It's not like a combo based fighter. It's a platform fighter.
Right.
So without these other 2D games, we probably wouldn't have Smash. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of occurred to me that I think the movement is probably a big part of its success.
Yeah, and I think that like. All the Smash Bros. Games
do
movement a lot better than a lot of fighting games in general. Like say one of the big problems I have with like Street Fighter or like Mortal Kombat, like I never felt like the movement was that great in those games.
It's not about that. It's about the combos and timing and Smash brings that in.
Yeah,
and everybody moves differently. Like there's a lot of options.
Yeah, I think Smash is a really great example of a fighting game that does movement really, really well. But, I think where this conversation is most at home is like big open world, like, those type of games where you're controlling a character and you have to do a lot of like walking and moving around.
Yeah.
And very rarely do those games do movement super, super well. With one exception in my mind, and that is Marvel's Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
And
That's some
Miles
great movement.
Morales. Yeah. But that's kind of cheating in a way.
It's my favorite part of the game.
Because you're not really walking. You know, you're not really walking around. You're web slinging.
Well, that's not what a spider does.
No. Oh yeah, I've seen so many spiders web swing, just like web sling and swing.
I've seen spiders web swing.
Well,
Like if they were hanging from a web and I went and I like blew in their direction.
yeah.
I've totally seen it.
But that's one game that does it really well. But again, that's kind of, it's not the same. You know, I was thinking like, what about games like Tony Hawk Pro Skater? Like those games have great movement, but
Super tight.
but you're on a skateboard. So I'm thinking like, I'm really more interested in games where you're like controlling a character and you're having to walk or jump around and like stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
Like Doom 2016, and I'm sure Doom Eternal as well. Those are games that I know they're not open world, they're level based, but still movement in those felt really good. I felt so powerful playing those games, like I could do anything.
Yeah, you're right. And I was thinking, I saw you put that on the list, and I was thinking about like other shooters, and I think a lot of shooters are getting like really nimble these days. You know, like Call of Duty, I don't play it, but it looks nimble.
Yeah, I'm sure they
Fortnite, you can move pretty well in Fortnite. I mean, it's not the same kind of thing. It's not like super fast, like zipping from place to place like Zoom or like Doom maybe, but it controls tight.
Yeah,
You know,
I think that they're
Apex.
definitely. I think that really the place where we see the most like problems is in these big open world games that are like these
Agreed.
big AAA open world games.
Yep.
But I think that there are some things that can be done to make movement in those games more interesting, and things that games do that make movement more interesting. Specifically, like I've written down a couple different things here that I thought make them better. Like one of the things I put on this list was fluid animations. And I think that like if a game has really natural, realistic fluid animations, even if it's not that much fun to or that responsive to control, just being able to see it look really fluid can make a big difference for me.
Oh, it definitely can. I mean, that and that goes back to what we were saying about Elden Ring. Like maybe the movement's not that bad. It just doesn't look great to us.
I think,
you
and
know?
I think that's the big thing. I don't think the movement probably is that bad.
Yeah.
It just doesn't look good. And to me, I'm such a I guess with video games, I'm a very visual person.
And you play games to like have fun and feel cool. You know?
Right. Yeah. And if you don't feel cool, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I get it. But like, I think of games like, Red Dead Redemption has very realistic animations with everything that Arthur Morgan's doing.
Yeah.
It all looks really great.
Yep.
The Horizon Zero Dawn, Forbidden West, that series, Aloy looks really cool and everything she's doing. Like all the animations just look good.
She looks super cool.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. Lots of AAA open world games are the high end ones. Are starting to get these really nice looking animations, and I think even if it's not super responsive, it goes a long way.
I agree.
Yeah. I wrote on some other things on here too. One of the ones we talked about yesterday was, say a game doesn't have great movement. Like my immediate thought was the Resident Evil games.
Yeah.
Because they don't have good movement.
No, they don't. But what they do is fit.
Right.
The movement fits. Yep. And it serves the story,
Right.
The fact that you can't zip out of that room with all those zombies adds to the tension.
Right. It's all about building tension, and it just feels right in that game. If you could just like really quickly move out of the way, you wouldn't be afraid of anything.
Right. I mean, even the reticle movement for the gun is bad in Resident Evil, but it still works.
It's got to fit the genre, I don't think that anyone's going to be like, I'm sure there are people who are like, man, movement's so bad in those games, I can't play them.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, and I would understand that because the movement isn't good, but for me, it totally is part of that genre, and it makes it great. Yeah, so that's definitely one thing. But other thing you can do, and definitely the newer Resident Evil games are definitely a great example of this, but also games like Ghost of Tsushima, I know that's one you're a big fan of, is just having like amazing atmosphere and scenery that like even if it's not too much fun to move around, at least while you're doing it, you get to see something amazing.
Yeah, Ghost of Tsushima I think is a great example of that. I mean, that game is so immersive and looked so good even on PS4, It was just like
I know.
So good.
The whole time I was playing it, me and Catherine were like, I want to go. If Japan looks like this, I
Yeah.
want to go to Japan.
Exactly.
It was just like, you couldn't help but be blown away by the scenery. And obviously a lot of games are going for that now, but I think it works. I really do.
Oh, I do too. And I think the movement in Ghost of Tsushima was pretty good.
Oh yeah, I do, but I think it was pretty good. I don't think it wasn't like nothing too memorable, but at the same time, it didn't matter because you were going around and it's like seeing all this beautiful stuff. I mean, yeah. Another thing that can make movement, even poor movement, more tolerable is when while you're moving, like that's the time for like dialogue and for the story to be expanded.
Oh yeah.
And the main example that comes to my mind with something like this is The Last of Us.
The Last of Us does a great job of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love those scenes where it's just like Joel and Ellie walk in and you get like some layers peeled back from the characters. And, Rockstar games do that well as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Red Dead's great for that. It's like on a horse, maybe. You'd be like on a horse and
or when you're
talking.
But still, I mean, like that makes, when you're moving from area to area, it makes it way more, at least, you don't have to suffer through it. At least it's not boring.
It's enjoyable.
Some people, this is where a lot of people make fun of games that do this because they'll have like, say you don't have like a companion like I think The Last of Us was brilliant to always have a companion with you.
Yeah.
In the original game. But also in part 2, you pretty much always have someone else around you because games that don't do that, what you have is the main character just like always talking out loud, which can come across as a little weird. Like I think people make fun of Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West because Aloy's like never shuts up and she's constantly just like talking to herself out loud.
Yeah, that is kind of weird. I've never really thought about that. It might be a tad self-servient.
But at the same time, like I think it works because it at least gives you some story, and it makes moving from area to area okay. It makes it better.
That reminds me of like the new thing for like a hidden loading screen. It's when you're like shimmying sideways through an area,
Well, that's been the new thing since like the PS4, but yeah.
Well, that's like something I like to make fun of. Speaking of
things
that people make
and
fun of.
and we're still seeing that because all the games now are cross gen. So, I've heard that the new God of War game is going to have that has a lot of that.
God of War had a lot of it. The last God of War did.
Yeah, definitely. And then the final thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of boring walking games, things that they can do to make it more interesting and that they do to make it more interesting is, just things that are like additional things on top of it to make it more engaging, like additional controls. Like the main thing that popped in my head was like a stamina gauge for like running. That's like the main thing you see, right?
Oh yeah, you see that all the time.
Even if it's not a stamina gauge, even if it's just like you eventually can't run anymore because you get tired.
Right.
Like that just makes it so that you have to have some sort of strategy while moving. And, pretty much all games do that now.
Yeah, just about. Yeah. Not Sea of Thieves. You can sprint forever in Sea of Thieves.
Well, that's pretty nice.
Actually, I enjoy it.
But the thing is in Sea of Thieves, you never have to run that far of a distance because it's all little islands or you're just on your boat. So it doesn't really make sense to have stamina.
Yeah.
But like Breath of the Wild is obviously, when you think about a stamina wheel, there's no better example than Breath of the Wild.
A big part of the game.
Yeah. And I watched a video recently where someone was complaining about the movement in Breath of the Wild because they said it felt slow. And I'm like, yeah, it is kind of slow, but like the great thing about the movement in Breath of the Wild is that you can do anything. You can climb anything. You can
get
glide off. Yeah.
Eventually.
It may be kind of like slow and deliberate while you're doing it, but like you can do anything. It's like so many possibilities. I think that makes it fun. And there are some fast-paced things you can do. You can, jump on your shield and snowboard down a hill and stuff. Yeah. And then we have games that do this like extra controls thing, like Death Stranding, where it's like walking. Yeah. Everything's got extra.
That is a very extra game.
Oh yeah.
That is an extra game.
Because you have to deal with like balance, and then you got your speed of walking changes it, and you got stamina, and it's like that is definitely like takes walking and makes you have to really pay attention. Which I could see how people could find that tedious, but I found it interesting for me.
Yeah. You know what else I found interesting? Kena, Bridge of Spirits for PS5. Talk about some jumping and moving. I mean, you can move in this game. Did you know? Anyway, get Kena like never before. And Kena for PS5. Not a sponsor.
Kana's movement was weird. Like, Kana had really nice fluid movement, but...
not for you.
No, not for me. Not for me, because I played it remote. Oh, God, that was awful. But also, I think even if I had been playing it on my system, I would have had problem with that. The fact that the platforming, it was really, like, edges on platforms were not well defined.
No, they weren't.
So you would often, like, think you made it to a something, but you'd fall right off.
Yeah, that was a problem I ran into.
Yeah.
And I was actually playing on the system.
And, like, what was crazy is, like, there would be so many, in Kana, there would be so many things where, like, you would try to go to some sort of wall or something and you'd be able to climb up. Except for, like, the deliberate, like, platforming sections, you couldn't do that.
No, there was no ledge grabbing.
No ledge grabbing at all.
Mm-hmm. So it had to be those white ledges.
Oh, man, it was so annoying. You could not, so you really, the platforming that was not great. But I don't know. We always bring up Kana and dish on Kana, but I thought, I don't know.
I don't dish on Kana.
No, I liked Kana. I bought it. I bought a copy of it.
It's a good game.
Yeah, I'll probably play it again one day, maybe. I at least have it in the collection. I at least have the option.
Are you ready to move on to the poll?
Oh, I'm ready to move on to the next topic. Okay. So, one of the things that I felt like everybody was talking about this past week is that Phil Spencer did an interview. And in the interview, he said this quote. Hit us with the quote, Daniel.
We've held price on our console. We've held price on games and our subscription. I don't think we'll be able to do that forever. I do think at some point we'll have to raise some prices on certain things. But going into this holiday, we thought it was really important that we maintain the prices that we have.
I'm sure he said it exactly like that.
I kind of tried to go into like movie trailer voice.
Yeah.
In a world where Phil Spencer raises prices.
So basically he said, like,
I spit on the microphone.
To summarize here, he said that the prices on some Xbox products, whether that be, he really just kind of hit everything. He was like the consoles, the games, and then the subscriptions. Some of that seems like he's kind of testing the waters, letting people know that, like, hey, prices are going to go up on one or more or all of these things. I don't know. So I asked in a poll, which Xbox product is most likely to become more expensive? And hit us with the results, Daniel.
Well, at 29%, people said the consoles are going to raise in price. At 12%, people said games. And the majority at 59% said Game Pass. And I know we talked about this, and I don't know that we really agree with this.
I don't agree with this. I think that I see why people think Game Pass. Because Game Pass seems like such a great value now. Like, it's the one thing that seems like, man, this is not only worth it, it's actually cheap.
Right.
Whereas games and consoles both seem expensive. So they think, like, of course they're not going to raise the price of games or consoles. They're going to raise the price on the thing that seems really inexpensive to make it at least, even if they raise the price, it'll still seem fair.
Right.
So I get that.
Yeah, I see the logic in that.
I get the logic. That being said, I don't agree.
No, I don't either. I think we both think that they will follow suit with maybe some of the competition here and raise the price of games.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing for them to do is just go to $70 games.
Yep.
I mean, PlayStation's already done it. And there's already third parties on Xbox doing it. So, I think that we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if we see, Redfall be $70 game.
Oh, yeah, me neither.
Starfield. Yeah, I really think that those are going to be $70 games.
Yeah.
I think that once we hit the new year, 2023, I think they're going to raise the price of games to $70. And I don't think it'd be that much of a surprise. The reason I say that as opposed to consoles is they've specifically said they're not raising the price of consoles. And I think they're going to stick with it.
That would be some egg on their face if they didn't. Because they did. They said they wouldn't.
Now, they said they wouldn't, but here, I wouldn't be surprised if any of them get raised. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if they raise the price of all three.
Yeah. Me neither. That would suck, but
I mean, we've seen all kinds of. Recently, we've seen the PS5 get a price raise everywhere except the United States. But even in the United States, really, there's been a price raise because now they don't sell them with anything but a bundle. So it's more expensive to get into a console. And then we've had things like the Quest 2, $100 price raise. Nintendo is saying that like the price to make a Switch, like they're not making hardly any money on the Switch.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're going to raise the price of the Switch, but I don't see them dropping it like they typically would.
No, I don't either. And this trend really like expands outside of video games. Like it's like tech as a whole. Like Apple had to raise the price of Apple raised the price of iPhones outside of the United States this year.
We saw the new NVIDIA graphics cards.
God, you gotta sell a kidney to buy one of those.
I know, and they're really expensive. And the old cards didn't drop in price like they always do.
Nope.
So it definitely goes on beyond just gaming. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Series X get a price raise. But if I had to pick one, I would say it's games.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, it's just the easiest thing.
I also just want to say, like, we've been getting a lot more responses on polls here recently.
Yes.
And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys voting in the polls and commenting on the polls. And speaking of, let's go to the comments on this.
Man, that was a hell of a segue.
Thank you. I worked hard on that. So we had Jake C. who said that he thinks Game Pass goes up to like $12.99 / $18.99 in the second half of 2023. So I guess $12.99 for the console or PC, and then $18.99 for the Ultimate. Once titles like Starfield, Redfall release, Microsoft will feel like they can get away with a price hike. I think it's fair.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
It's fair. I think, and again, Game Pass is cheap, so it really wouldn't be that crazy to raise the price of it. But the reason I don't think they're going to do it is because I really do think that they are trying to set the barrier of entry to Game Pass as low as humanly possible.
Yeah, me too.
But
maybe they introduce like their streaming only division like we talked about, and maybe it's the cheap one now.
And they may do that. But also I feel like this would be a bad move if they raise the price of Game Pass, because it would be like a serious slap in the face to every person who has had Game Pass for the past 2 years and they've had almost no big releases from Microsoft on it. Right. No day one releases because they haven't been putting out games, yet they've still been paying full price for it. And then the moment they come out with a game that they actually want to play on there, they raise the price.
That would be kind of cold.
It would be really cold.
Think about that, Phil.
You
better think long and hard about that, buddy.
I know you're watching this, Phil. I know you are. That'd be hilarious. No, he's definitely not. Definitely not.
And I saw that floppy disk disguised as a little Xbox on your shelf, and I'm not fooled. I just want you to know.
Someone commented on one of our things, like, I don't know, they said like that they, I can't remember what the exact comment was, but basically they alluded to the fact that they worked for Microsoft and that thing on his shelf was a prototype for a cloud gaming, and that they had scrapped it.
I think it was a floppy disk.
I think this person was just making crap up.
Not on the internet, not in a YouTube comment. That's ridiculous. Moving on. We got a comment from old Telvrin. Telvrin. That sounds like some High Valyrian or something. Anyway, aren't games already becoming more expensive? More and more companies are raising the price to $70. I really don't want this to become industry standard, but it seems inevitable at this point.
Yeah, I think that this is the thing that's going to be more likely to go up is game price. I mean, as far as I know, Microsoft or Phil Spencer or anybody associated with Xbox, I don't think anyone said that they're not going to raise to 70, but maybe they have. Maybe I just missed it.
I haven't heard that quote, but maybe. Yeah.
I think this is the thing. Games. And then last year we had Aaron Heath.
This is a long one.
Who said nothing. Aaron, I appreciate your optimism. I'm not sure I agree with you. We can hope that nothing gets raised in price. But, I mean, I guess if nothing does I would be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if all three of them go up in price. I would be surprised if none of them go up in price.
That, I don't feel like that is even an option at this point.
Yeah.
Or Phil wouldn't have said that.
Yeah, I think that was a very deliberate thing to say. He wouldn't have said it if like no one at the Xbox had been talking about like, okay, we're raising prices in the new year. I don't think he would have said, prices are going to have to go up, but for the holiday they're staying the same. He's trying to say, guys, this holiday things are going to stay the same, but as soon as the new year comes around,
get ready.
Something's going up. Maybe all three. Maybe just two.
Or maybe nothing.
Maybe nothing.
All right.
Maybe. I would be surprised, but maybe. I mean, crazier things have happened. All right. Moving on to the last segment of the podcast, Daniel. We're going to talk about what games we played this week.
This is so many games.
I know.
What is wrong with you?
He's looking at the list that I wrote on here. I have a problem.
Like, get a life, bruh.
Okay. So what happened this week to me is that 2 games came out that I wanted to play this weekend, and I didn't want to put them off. So that was specifically the Shadows of Rose, the Resident Evil Village DLC, which I played and finished, and it was amazing. But it only was like it took me less than 3 hours to do the whole thing. But it was so good. And then Bayonetta 3 came out, and I started that. Actually, just started that one today. We recorded this over the weekend, so I was a couple days late getting to that one, but I wanted to play it. But then also I finished playing Costume Quest, which is the game that Catherine and I were playing, which is like it's a little like Halloween game. It was turn-based, sort of like Paper Mario. It was actually really good. We really enjoyed it. We finished that. And then we started playing in its place. We started playing Inside, which...
I've heard good things about that game.
Yeah, it's a puzzle platformer. Mm-hmm. It reminds me a lot of...
it's really vibey.
It's very vibey. But yeah, it reminds me most similar to a game we just finished playing, Unravel, which is also a puzzle platformer. They have a lot of similar DNA. They obviously look very different, but their core mechanics are very similar. So we've been playing that. But I've also been playing Sparks of Hope, which is the new Mario plus Rabbids game.
Yep, I'm very interested in that.
Been playing that this week and been enjoying that one. And I've also been trying to finish up playing Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, which I'm almost done with. And I've been working on The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, which is a VR game, and I'm almost done with that one as well. So, although I've been playing a lot of games this week, some of them are finished. Like Costume Quest is done, Shadows of Rose is done, Luigi's Mansion is almost done, Saints and Sinners is almost done. So this list is about to go down.
That's ridiculous. 7 games. I would never be able to juggle 7 games. Like, I just don't have the mind for it.
I don't know that I do either.
Anyway, well, I haven't been playing half that much. I played a lot of Smash at esports. In fact, one day I walked in there and I just felt like I was out for blood, and I ran through everybody for the entire practice. It was ridiculous. Got back into Sea of Thieves this week. I'm very excited to get back into that. And finally got to experience the Fortnite because I didn't play anything last week because I felt like death. So I'm excited to just be back.
You're just back.
Mm-hmm. We'll be playing what? Fortnite tonight?
We'll be playing Fortnite tonight. Yep, on our stream. Well, when this comes out, we will have played Fortnite the day before, but...
It's just coming out on Monday or Tuesday?
Monday. Okay. I've moved the podcast to Mondays now.
Okay.
Podcasts are now on... Oh, yeah, I should say that. Podcasts are now on Mondays instead of Tuesdays. I realized with my workload that it's just easier for me to put the podcast out on Mondays than it is for me to do it on Tuesdays. So...
Excellent.
It's earlier in the week. It just kind of helps me get the podcast over with for the week, and then I can do other things. So instead of having it there for an extra day.
Yeah. Well, Randy, I'm here to... you better be glad I'm back is all I'm saying, because I'm here to right the wrongs of last week.
Yeah, I know.
Randy, in his infinite wisdom, forgot the 3 for Dale Club.
I know. Well, I was
forgot the 3 for Dale Club.
I had to do the podcast all on my own last week, and just trying to do it by myself threw me off, and I forgot the 3 for Dale Club. I also forgot to do a Kana ad, and I could have done it because I have Kana at my house.
Man, I'm so disappointed in you.
I know.
It can't be overstated. So anyway, this is a makeup for last week, but we want to shout out Landon Stallings and Heather Cook. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for being a member of the 3 for Dale Club. we love you.
Yes. And remember, if you want to be part of the 3 for Dale Club, all you got to do is comment 3 for Dale in the comments. And that just lets us know that you made it all the way to the end of this video, which means you're in the 10% of people who make it all the way to the end.
Yep.
You're in the upper echelon. You are the diehards. We want to know who you are, and we want to shout you out at the end of the next podcast.
Heck yeah, we do.
So there you go. All right. Well, until next time, I'm Randy.
And I'm Daniel.
And this has been Gaming Gig.
Peace out.